So I stretched this animation out to make it look a little more realistic, but the biggest problem is that the inchworm inches up and collapses immediately down, which doesn't look right. So I think what would look much better is if there were a cycle there where we got the same tween coming down. So you might be thinking, well, that's going to be a lot of work. We're going to have to remake that. No, remember, it's a symbol. We can go into any symbol and edit it. So if we go to the library, there's the worm. We double click on it, bring up the timeline for its or for itself for that symbol, and then there's my starting phase. There's my what should be middle phase. All I have to do is copy the ending phase. So a click again with the Option key held down and drag. And I think it should come down faster than it came up. So let's try about right there. And then all we have to do is put in the shape tween in between. So now we have a complete cycle. Starts there, ends there. Okay, so let's try this out. I did a little test run in here and realized that it should be even further. So you can see I've extended my timeline quite a bit. And now if we play it, for that little bit of work that we did, we now have something that's as good as anything that we did with the frame by frame. I want to talk about something that's probably not going to come up until the next video, but in order for you to be able to grasp it, you really need to pay attention to something that's happening now. Right now, we're working with an animated symbol. That animated symbol is a graphic. Remember when we created it, we have three choices: movie clip, graphic, and button. So we've explored two of the three of those right now. But what's important is that you understand that right now, these timelines work together. If we didn't have the tween section here for our animated symbol long enough, we wouldn't get to see one full cycle, right? I mean, if we stopped it here, that's all we would see, and then it would disappear. We also get to see exactly what it looks like in preview mode. So there's really not a big difference between doing a command return and just hitting the play button here. That will be very different when we get to movie clips. So try to really grasp this now. Get comfortable going back and forth between the two timelines. So here we are on the timeline for the main stage, or AKA scene one. And then if we double click on the worm itself, we have a whole different timeline here. We have the timeline for the worm, and it tells us that we're beyond scene one. We are one item deeper, what they call breadcrumbs, one breadcrumb deeper into the worm here. Before we move on to the next topic, let me just clarify what I expect to see from you in your video. You can do exactly what I'm doing if you want to, but if you have assets that you want to try out, then go ahead and get as creative as you want. All I'll be looking for is to see that you have indeed one shape tween, like this one here, the let's call it L to square, that takes place on the main timeline, and that's the green color coding. Then I'll want to see that you have a shape tween that actually happens in the library, that the actual shape tween, the green tween that happens, is in the timeline, and that you're just moving it out on the stage. And in fact, I'm even going to, just so that we get a chance to really take all this in, I'm going to move this up to here, so that just kind of taking advantage of the space here. So the first thing we'll see is the worm, and then I'm even going to do one more thing here where I'm just going to have the worm sit still for one frame, or for like a half a second before it moves. Actually, before I do that for the worm, let me do it for this L shape so you can see the differences. So basically what I want is this first frame to start earlier, let's say about a half second earlier. I don't need it to tween, I just need it to stay there. And that's indeed what it's doing, but why have a tween here if it's not really tweening. So I'll remove it. Just makes it easier to troubleshoot and understand what's going on. Now, to do the similar thing over here, it's probably not going to work quite like we want it to at first. So I kick that back, and there's the worm, and it's doing its thing already. And then here it continues doing its thing, even, and there is a little oddness that happens here because we're going from one instance of it where it starts out completely flat to another instance of it where it starts completely flat. But if the timing between those two isn't perfect, then that messes that up. But since that's not what we're trying to do, it doesn't matter anyway. But even if I remove the tween out of here, the worm's still doing its thing. Why is that? Well, remember, this tween here on the main timeline is just to move it left to right. So as long as it has a space here to do its thing, it will do its thing. So what we actually need here is just a static version of that symbol. The easiest way to do that in this case is just to make a copy of this. So we'll select it in the library. We'll go down to here. One of these will be to make a copy. Or no, actually, we're going to have to right click on it and do duplicate. So I'll just call this worm static. It'll still be a graphic. Click OK. I will make sure that that is indeed what's selected. So when I double click here, I'll go into the timeline for it. And I'll select these frames, do a Shift F5, so now it's just a single frame, and I can get rid of that tween that's in there too. So it's just a single frame of the word worm. If we go back to the main timeline, there is still the existing one, but watch how easy this can be. We're just going to select it right here. I'm going to actually click on it to make sure that that's what's selected. If I go into properties, it tells me that it's an instance of worm, but I have this swap button here, and I will swap it out with the static. And then now, I just have that sitting there for a second so the audience can anticipate something's going to happen, and then voila, it starts, then this other thing shows up, and they get a double bang for their buck. And then here, where the worm comes to an end, I could do the same thing. So I'm putting in the next transition here, and I timed the length of this animation where the worm moves across the stage so that it ends when the worm is completely flat. So then I can just do something nice and easy here, do an F6, copy that frame, select the actual piece, actual object on the stage. Oh, I'm selecting the fade that's over the top, so let me lock that, turn it off for a second. Select that guy, go into properties, and then swap with the worm static. And then while the other thing is fading in, I can just extend it out. So what I should have here then is the worm fades out, text fades in. Notice when I preview my movie, it gets to about right here and stops. And that is because we have this leftover stop somewhere in the middle here from when we demoed it. So we could do one of two things. We could drag that all the way to the end and have it stop our current at the end, or we could just simply delete this for now and then put it in when we need it at the end. So what we'll do is just right click on that, go to actions, and just get rid of that, and we can continue on. If you have any difficulties with this section right here, just go back and watch the last time that we did the transition, and you may even want to just hit pause right here and realize, you know, where I put in my label, where the reusable fade comes in and ends, where the text comes in and ends, and the fact that I extended the last little bit of the shape tween. And you can probably see that a little bit better if I shut the fade off. There's the worm down at the bottom right there, almost out of screen. And so you can kind of see what happens there without the fade on. So we're not going to start on a topic that is confusing to some people at first, especially in a format like this where you have a fixed stage. Some digital animation programs have cameras that you can move around. And if you want to think of this program in terms of a camera, think of it that the stage is your camera and it stays fixed. So you have to go out to the world that's beyond the camera, and if you want to pan to the left, you have to move the world to the right. If you want to zoom in on something, you have to move the world closer to you, right? And moving the world closer to you in this program is equivalent to scaling something up. And to zoom out, you have to scale something down. So the key thing is if you want to have a big cityscape or landscape and zoom around on it, you need something that is way bigger than your stage, right? Because in order for you to zoom in the real world, you need a world that's bigger than your camera. So I provided to you in Blackboard an Illustrator file. Go ahead and open up that Illustrator file in Illustrator. And even if you've never used Illustrator before, you'll be able to follow along with this. Just do exactly what I do here. Let's make sure we have the same screen, that we're looking at everything the same. So up here, use the down arrow and go to Essentials, and then go one step further, and that includes even if it already said Essentials, go down to the bottom and then reset Essentials. So step one was to make sure that this says Essentials. Step two is to reset it. And then if anything opens up over here, you can just click those double arrows to close it up. So all we want to do is take the selection tool in here and draw a marquee so that we end up circling around this 1 through 7. We don't want to accidentally have our marquee up here because we'll get these as well. So just right here, then we're going to do an edit, copy, then we're going to go back into Adobe Animate, and we are going to make a new layer, and we're going to put a blank keyframe on there. So there's my new layer. I just named it BG, short for background, put in a blank keyframe right here, and now inside of Flash I'm going to do edit and paste in center, and I'll probably get a little dialog box, there we go, that opens up. I definitely don't want to check this, don't want anything to be a bitmap unless it has to be like an actual photograph. Paste using AI file importer preferences, yes. Apply recommended import settings, yes. Maintain layers, no. We don't need layers in here, so we click OK, and there we go. We get that humongous thing in here. I hit Command minus a couple times just so we could see the entirety of this, and it was even hard to tell what our stage is. So you can see there's our stage, there's what we're going to be zooming. This is huge. It also renamed my layer on me, and that's because we brought in something from Illustrator, so I'll just name that back so I'm aware of what's going on. But one of the first things I want to do is convert that to a symbol. So F8, give it a name, and we will keep it as a graphic, and maybe I'll just call it BG for background again. So what I want to achieve is a look here, like I have a camera that's view window is about this big, and I'm just going to pan from left to right. So we should see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 come along. Now, in your mind, you can imagine that maybe these numbers represent buildings on a street, and these different colors represent different landscape, trees, flowers, etc. So I'm going to select this with the free transform tool, move it up near my stage here, and then I am going to, with the shift key held down to constrain the proportions, just zoom this down a bit. So I'm just holding down shift and moving the mouse in. That's probably good enough to get the idea across here. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll zoom in a little bit closer. We can see that we have a little bit of a placement issue here because as soon as we put this over the stage, we kind of lose the stage. So an easy way to fix that is to bring out your rulers And if you don't already have them out, you just go up to View, Rulers, and turn it on. And then what we can do is zoom in even further, and we'll drag out some